to the fact that there are many NIRs and they meet together and they take a decision and then they have a single voice. But you can see, for example, that the only emails that we received during a period of the last 6 months was 1 or 2 weeks before the meeting, instead of having discussion during all the period, which is the obvious thing, because if somebody disagrees with some text, as we had the disagreement today about the working group chapter, we could have resolved it before instead of spending here a lot of time and having more clarifications and so on, right? So I know, and it has been stated several times by the chairs, that when they take the decision about consensus, they really look into the comments on the mailing list. I know that, but formally, they should not do that because the PDP don't state it. So we need to fix something that if anyone complains, he's right, because the PDP say the consensus is only from the meeting. Same with the comfort. The consensus is taking in consideration the comfort, but formally, this is not in the PDP. So we cannot have our law saying the consensus is only the meeting and we are actually considering more things, okay? So this is one of the main things that I am trying to fix. It's not actually a real change, but at least clarify the text to say what we really are doing. And then the other aspect I am considering is we don't have an in-house mechanism for solving disputes or disagreements with the process. So if the community believes, or the authors of a policy proposal believes that there has been a mistaken decision by the chairs or whatever, there is no way to appeal that decision. And I think it's good to have something in-house instead of having a dispute outside of the community. I think that's really needed, and in many countries, law mandates that. I'm not sure what will be the jurisdiction of the APNIC PDP, but I guess that because the community is the global internet, it can be any jurisdiction, right? So having that resolves the problem so easily. Finally, today, we don't have a clear definition of what is consensus or what is the last call. In fact, this morning, Kenny already mentioned that. There is a specific RFC defining that. So why don't get the text from that RFC and put it in our PDP? And that's exactly what I am doing. I think that's it. We cannot compare the PDP in different regions because there are some differences. For example, 18 is totally different. While RIPE is only considering the mailing list, not the meeting, okay? That's the bigger differences among other regions. APNIC, LACNIC, and APNIC more or less have very similar process. So I don't think we can take that as an input, especially because we need to understand that there are cultural differences that we need to respect, even if it will be good to try to improve as much as possible the participation in the mailing list. So this is what I am proposing, and I have different slides, one for each change. Again, in the slide to the left, you have the existing text and the change I am proposing. So here, the actual text talk about consensus on the meeting, and I am changing that to consensus determination because, in fact, we don't get the consensus just in the meeting. We are getting route consensus. That's the definition of the consensus that we use in all the registries that comes from the ITF, and is determined looking into both the mailing list, other electronic means, which today is comfort, but it may be something different. In fact, there was some consultancy to the community if it can be changed or improved or whatever, and the succession. And as we do today, I am not changing that. We also check or double check that consensus in the members meeting. So I am not changing that. I'm just keeping it, and maybe there is some editorial changes, but I am not changing the consensus in the members meeting. If there is no consensus, the authors can decide to withdraw the proposal, or if the authors don't provide a new version, it will automatically expire. I think that's a sanity check. If the authors are not contributing, we should automatically withdraw the proposal. I think actually this happened already a couple of times, that the authors were not responding anymore or whatever. So we need to have a formal mechanism to work on that. The second change is, today is called discussion in after the OPM. I am calling it last call to make it more coherent with what we are doing. And I think the actual text, I am not reading it, I am just from top of my head remembering that it was a variable period of discussion, right? After the consensus has been reached. I think it should be something fixed, 4 weeks. So every policy that reaches consensus should have a very fixed, for all the proposals the same period. In this case, I am taking 4 weeks. And I am explaining what is the meaning of the last call. As it's normal, if you have objections during the last call, you still need to justify why. Okay, it's not just, I object, no reason for that. No, you really need to justify exactly like here we do when we ask somebody to explain why he's strongly opposing to a proposal. Confirming consensus, I am giving the chairs a maximum period of 1 week after the last call to decide. So it's not like chairs can decide after 2 months or 3 months, or they need to decide in 1 day. No, 1 week I think is time enough for the chairs, after we finalize the last call, to take a final decision. And again, if there is not, after the last call, let's say, a sustained consensus, then the authors again can take the decision about withdrawing the proposal, or in 6 months sending a new version. Okay? This is totally new. We don't have today a formal way, and nobody knows how to address that within the community. So if somebody complains about a decision, or for example, as I mentioned in my first presentation today, a proposal has been declared out of scope by the chairs, there is not a formal way to address that. So what I am suggesting, that this might be brought to the list openly. Yeah. Oh, it changed here, but not in that screen. No. But here is not changing then. It's okay. Next one, yeah. Sorry, it seems that they are not synchronized. I am using it, but I don't know. So what I am saying is, if somebody has something to object, they must bring it to the mailing list openly, and if there is not, let's say, a final solution in the mailing list, then it might be brought to the EC. I think it's the right thing, because at the end, the EC is the one ratifying the policy proposal. So they need to be able also to resolve conflicts. And then, again, I am not going to read the text. This is basically taken from RFC 7282, if I am correct remembering, is the definition of consensus, and that's it. So it's exactly the same we are using, but let's have it clearly defined in the text, so everybody reading the PDP knows about it, because today we don't have even a reference to the RFC that defines it. So now we have a short definition and a reference to the full text. Advantages, I think it's basically making sure that we follow a better and clear process. We have the appeal process. We have concrete definitions of what is the raw consensus, what is the last call, specific periods of time for the different phases, which were not very clearly defined before. I don't see there are differences or impacts, and references to other regions which have similar PDPs. Not exactly the same, but similar. Again, in this case, I cannot have a single slide with everything, but if there are questions on any specific slide, I can go to that. Let's go, for example, for the first one. I think is this one. So let's stay there. If there are any questions.
Any comments on the floor? Questions for the author? Ooh, okay. Sunny's got something to say. Where is it? I was about to say something anyway.
Sunny from APNIC. If you look at Jody, the policy development process as published on the mayor website, it does clearly say this mailing list discussion is taken into account by the chairs when the proposal is considered for consensus. So the comments on the mailing list is considered, and I clarified this before as well.
The thing, I don't have here my computer to double check, but the thing is that there are different web pages for the PDP. There is one which is the formal PDP that has only 5 steps, and this web page don't have any text that reference to that. It's true that if I recall correctly, in the right-hand column, there is a reference to the graphics and to guidelines or something like that. But people typically go to look into a single page for all the information, and we don't have that here. I know that it may be clear, and the chairs always said that they consider the mailing list as well. But I think it doesn't harm to specifically mention in the real text of the PDP. Okay?
So when you say, sorry, Sunny from APNIC again. So when you say real text in the APNIC, you want to see that in that diagram that we have, or where exactly? I mean, I'm reading out of the policy development process, and I'm not trying to. Your proposal is your proposal, okay? I'm just clarifying what's on the website, what's in the process. Where do you want to see that text?
For me, the formal text is the one that say step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and step 5. That's the real text, because when I look to the history of the PDP, that was the text that was approved. The other is additional explanations that the Secretariat developed, okay? Of course, the community accepted that, but in the text that was approved by the community, we had only the 5 steps, looking at the history.
Okay, I'll take that point and I'll review the text, and it's already in the process, so maybe I'll put that point in the text there. So is that clarifies here? Yes,
it's a way, but I think this is a change in the PDP, and changes in the PDP need to go through the PDP. It's not just the staff making, because it's not an editorial change.
I understand that point as well. Yeah. No, I take your point. Thanks.
Thank you.
I just wanted to point out that in step 1, it is pretty clear that you have to submit the policy on the mailing list, has to be discussed, and then it goes to the OPM. And the second step clearly says consensus at the OPM. It does not say consensus on the policy, because there is step 4, which says confirming consensus, which includes the comment period, and then only confirmation of the...
But I think that last step is only for the last call, not for the full process.
No, it is. I mean, that is a check and balance there. Right?
Exactly.
That is a check and balance. The step 2 that you are talking about is the chair determining consensus in the room. It doesn't need to define, it has to consider the mailing list, because they are saying that what is the room saying, and that is step 2, right? Then it goes to the comment period, and they still have to, that is entirely their discretion.
Yep.
And final comment to say that, okay, we have the full consensus on that policy. I don't think if they are in the room, trying to cause consensus in the room, the mailing list has to be considered. This is already done, and there is future chance to do it. I don't know, I'll actually defer this to the SIG chairs. Again, what problem does this solve?
Clarity. I think clarity is very important, especially if any newcomer comes to the community, they will be able to, in a single page, make sure they understand how is the process. And they make sure they can contribute in the list and it's considered.
Yeah, it is. It says that. It says that, yeah, as I read it.
I don't really think it's that clear in the actual text.
Let's get some native English speaker. Neither you nor I am native English speaker. Maybe we get someone and have them
Look,
read this.
the fact that we disagree shows that there is not sufficient clarity.
So let's get someone with native English speaking or skills and read this out, because I think this is very clear to me.
Any more comments on that? If no, let's move forward to the next discussion. And
So next slide, you mean, or what?
yeah.
Yeah?
You have few.
You want to go
points
one by one?
actually, right? So
Yeah.
Here, I think the most important change is fixing the timing, 4 weeks after the declaration of consensus. I think that's the major change. Instead of having a common period that is not shorter than 4 weeks and not longer than 8 weeks. I think fixing the period makes no difference between one proposal and another.
again, the questions come, same question of the previous slides. That's what is the big difference here actually? What improvement is
Fixing the timing.
Okay.
The 4 weeks to 8 weeks is up to the chair's discretion. You know, it is fixed actually. It is 4 weeks, right? If they want to extend, they can extend to up to maximum 8 weeks. But that flexibility was allowed in the. I don't have much history of the previous discussion. What happened? Aftab have it, so you will clarify. Thanks.
The point is why you want to extend. If they want to extend, it's
Mr.
because there is no
Parhan, after
clarity.
a second.
Yeah.
I just want a little clarification. Where you are saying that appropriate SIG mailing list during 4 weeks. Why the word during? It should be within 4 weeks. No?
During, I don't get what you mean.
What you have written in last call,
Well, maybe that's an editorial
proposals
change,
that
right?
have reached consensus at OPM, AMM will be circulated on the appropriate SIG mailing list during 4 weeks. I don't think this is the appropriate word. Probably, do you mean to say within 4 weeks?
You mean using within instead of during?
Yes.
I have no problem with that. I mean, it's English wording. I am not native English, so maybe
It's not
I am breaking it.
It's not question of that. See, remember, every word has a meaning.
Yeah,
And
I
it
agree.
has an implication.
Yeah.
What Gaurav was trying to tell you is right. Every word in English has a meaning and an interpretation. And that is how then it is interpreted in our laws, you know, whether it is bylaws or any other laws affecting the community or the countries. So we cannot play around with the words of English. So if it is within 4 weeks, it has a meaning that yes, the proposal must be circulated within 4 weeks. It should, all the processes should be done and it should be out for circulation within a period of 4 weeks. That is what you are meaning to say. But when you write during, it gives a total different meaning. That's what I said. Thank you.
Yeah, if I may have a comment too. I've never heard of any extension used beyond the 4 weeks period. So maybe it was way before I was even aware of APNIC existence.
If I may. Yes,
Please.
so Aftab Siddiqui. We had 8 weeks timeline in the past, right? And then we decided that 8 weeks is just too long on the basis of historical data, saying, well, we never got any messages after a couple of weeks. In the initial 2 or maybe 3 weeks, people say, well, we support it, we don't support it, we made changes, but it was very, very rare. Once the consensus was made, people didn't comment much. So we moved from 8 weeks to 4 weeks, and the reason we made that change and left the 4 week to 8 weeks up to the chair is, let's assume there is something controversial in that policy and it's been approved, had consensus, and it's now back to the mailing list, and that discussion is ongoing in 4 weeks' time. So chair has this power, so he can increase that time limit, and that was the whole idea, leaving that aside. So it is up to the chair. If you say, okay, fine, it should be 2 weeks, but then again, it should be, just leave that to chair, right? And then the chair can make a decision. And quickly, one point on your wordings, which you have just said a moment ago, that you are not a native English speaker. Neither am I, nor Gaurav. Let's leave it to the native English speaker for fixing this English text. That's why we have Secretariat with the right resources who can review it. And that's what I discussed in the morning, that on this one, we need to have a good view that what is the problem we are trying to address. I'm absolutely fine with you trying to address a problem, but we heard some reservation from the NIR side, and they told you why. So probably this requires a more bigger discussion rather than a policy text first and then discussion.
So you are meaning to have the NIRs directly involved with helping to review these texts?
Yes, and they have a SIG for that.
Yeah.
Right.
So I am happy to work on with that SIG to find the correct wording for every change we do. So I am happy to that. Just a quick comment about the extension of the last call period. If there is an extraordinary discussion beyond the 4 weeks, I think the right thing to do in that case is to not declare consensus, not to extend the period. You see my point?
No, the right thing to do is leave it to the chair.
Jody, I would also like to mention here, when we talk of time, and in a case like this, the time has two separate connotations. The first connotation is time when this list should be circulated. So that will be one time. And the second time is the duration for which the discussion will take place, right? So that clarity needs to be, if you are going in for a policy proposal, that needs to be clarified, that why we put the first time when it should go into circulation is so that the policy SIG does not keep sitting over it for a long time without any discussion, but it is bound to send a policy proposal within a specified time for the people, right? And then it gives them a certain amount of time for discussion so that people should know that within this period we have to finish what we have to do. So that is what I said.
I totally agree with you. My mistake here was trying to modify as less as possible the existing text. I used a text that is not...
Please, modification of any text, especially when we are talking of policies,
Yeah.
we should not be constrained by just number of words.
Right.
And which should further lead to confusion in understanding.
Yeah.
A clarity should be there. You don't have clarity, we have got Craig who can answer the legal point of it and give you the clarity, right? Else he will have his books out. Thanks.
Thank you. Can we move to the next point, please?
Yep. This is basically defining 1 week of time for you after the last call to confirm whether there is consensus or not. And then reinforcing that in case there is no consensus, the authors can resubmit again or will expire in 6 months.
Yeah, so we've got 4 weeks and then you add an extra week.
For you to decide. So you don't need to decide in just 1 minute or 1 day. You have a full week to make a decision. So you have chance to talk among you or whatever is needed.
Okay. Any?
The next is the same continuation of the earlier slides actually, so nothing new here.
Yeah,
so we can move to the next one.
No comment or questions. So, next point.
Next one, the appeal process is basically if somebody in the community disagree, go to the list, express the disagreement, and if it's not resolved in the list or not resolved by the chairs, then be able to go to the EC.
Any comment on this particular thing? But anyway, any proposal goes to the EC actually, that, and they also get the view, because
Yeah, it's redundant, I think.
But anyway.
We've got, yeah,
Gaurav?
Craig or Gaurav.
Looks like we're going to say the same thing, but you can't set a policy to direct the work of the EC. It is in the bylaws. The legal guy.
Well, the current PDP has a call for the AC to ratify it, so it's the same.
Okay, Jody, Craig Ng, APNIC General Counsel. I am actually raising an issue that you raised on the mailing list on the 26th of August. I take issue when you suggest that APNIC's processes are illegal. I would caution you against making statements such as that. The basis of your statement is that the policy development process at APNIC does not include appeal process, and for that reason, it is illegal. Well, I'm not sure what the basis of your legal comment on that point is. There's no such thing. The fact that you don't have an appeal process built into the system doesn't mean that you can't resolve dispute or issues. And this is how the system has always worked. The APNIC EC are members of the community. They sit here, they listen, they watch the processes, and if they find that the process is defective, they raise it with the SIG chairs. That's safeguard number one. And you've got subsequent safeguards where they approve and endorse the policy at the end. And they're not going to do that, or if they did that, whilst there are issues, then they're not discharging their duty properly. So to put in an appeal process, so my point to you is this. Number one, the fact that there is no appeal process does not make it illegal. Number two, the fact that there is no dispute resolution process doesn't prevent a dispute resolution process. Number three, there are safeguards already built in through the EC endorsement of policy. Thank you.
What Craig has said, absolutely right. I will just add on a little bit on when you say appeals process, right? Every stage of policy building is an appeals process. What Brijesh today did, when he raised a strong objection on a particular issue, what was it? It was an appeals process. It went through, his voice was heard. People have understood the issue. So this is also a kind of an appeals process. And to say that there is no appeals process and it is illegal, I think that is stretching the statement a little too far.
I see your point, and I agree, but look at what happened with our resource hijacking proposal. It has been rejected by the chairs, which means that if I have an appeal process, I could have resolved it before coming to the meeting, instead of now waiting 6 months for resolving it. And I think timing sometimes is important. I am not saying it's important in that specific case, it's just one example, but there may be situations where we need a faster way to resolve the things.
Yes, I agree with you, Jody, there, that if the chairs have rejected your proposal and they have told you to come to the meeting again and present it, well, you can form your grievance, what I would say, as part of an appeal to the chair here in front of all of us. You can say that, listen, I had sent it, there was, time was important. You sent it, I think, in July end?
End of July.
End of July. And probably the EC chairs, after all, we have got very senior people sitting in the EC, in the SIG chairs. And they have taken a decision because the time left was just a month for the meeting to come up. And probably they thought best would be to let it come out in the open in front of everyone. So whatever it is, whatever their intentions may have been, so we have to take these things in stride, right? And we have to progress slowly on these at times, right? And we have got our wise men sitting there. And if you have an appeal, put up an appeal now. I mean, people will listen to it.
I tried to make an appeal, and the response I got is, we don't have such process.
Excuse me, Craig. There was a comment from a remote participant, Adam Gosling. I oppose this proposal for many reasons. Most importantly, it does not take into consideration the APNIC SIG guidelines. Any change to the PDP should consider those guidelines. I would suggest if Jordi feels there are important problems that need addressing in the PDP, it would be better to tackle them one at a time.
Okay, this is a very good opportunity for me to say something that I forgot before. It's true that we have SIG guidelines, but if you look at the formal text of the PDP, there is no mention at all about guidelines. So we are modifying our law without mentioning it. You know what I mean? So that's precisely one of the problems that I believe we have with the PDP. We have a PDP on one side, guidelines on the other, and no connection between them. We know the connection because we are used to it, but if we take a formal view of the text, there is no connection. And that's one of the problems.
I think we need to be very, very brief. We are running out of time. So Craig and Aftab, the last two comments here.
Just in response to your claim that you have appealed and it was rejected because there was no process, I am aware that you have appealed, and the basis for the decline of appeal is that the decision, we believe, sits with the SIG chairs in relation to the proposal that you submitted, not that there is no appeal process. So you did appeal, it was considered, and you were rejected. That is not the same as not having it being appealed to your satisfaction.
It was not really that way. What happened is that my only way to know how to appeal was contact to Paul. Paul, how we appeal? You cannot appeal, we don't have a process. That's the response I got.
Paul said that this sits with the SIG chairs.
No, I can find the email and show you later, but basically he said there is no process, you can only bring to the forum. That was the thing.
Aftab, last comment, please.
Yeah, a quick comment, but there's a comment from, I got a message from someone. There's a comment on a remote participant which hasn't been read, so if you can do that as well, that would be great, I appreciate it. And Aftab Siddiqui, hi Adam, since he's online. Anyway, so just a quick message we have discussed this several times in the past. Let's clarify the problem statement first before coming up with the proposal. Let's share with the community what problem we are trying to address, and then come up with the proposal. That's the problem I see here. In your appeal process, you didn't share the problem with the community. I follow multiple mailing lists. I know it's a very hot topic in RIPE NCC region, and the RIPE community is discussing it, and some are supporting it. It was shared in the with the ARN AC. ARN AC didn't accept it. They have a appeal process, but here it's every RIR is different, right? And you understand that better than anyone. So come up with the problem statement, which you did. Today, in the morning session, we all heard the problem. And now it's up to the community to decide and come up and say, oh, we really like this solution which you are proposing, and chairs, please allow this to come up as a proposal. And I'm pretty sure chairs will accept it, because there is a community behind it. If you don't have a community behind with a controversial idea, I am really struggling to understand why would chairs accept it, even if there is a appeal process. So you did your part, you shared it with the community. They now understand the problem. They now have a solution which you have proposed. Whether it's a good or bad, it's something different. But now they have something to review. And you can go back and say, well, here's what I was proposing. If you want to support me, I can go back and try to propose as a policy proposal, right?
Thank you.
Oh. Yeah.
I just want to make a comment, and I just want to mention that in the mailing list also there is some support for this from the Japan Open Policy Forum, and there is some strong opposition as well that like from Javed Khan, I do not support this proposal, and I have complete trust in the current APNIC PDB and the community. So saying that, I think we can go for the consensus call.
Exactly. Well, I'll call for the consensus now. So, if you strongly support, can we have the confer, please, first? Sorry. Okay, so now we can go. If you strongly support this proposal, please raise your hand. Thank you. If you support this proposal, please raise your hand. Thank you. If you are neutral, thank you. If you oppose this proposal, raise your hand. More opposition than support. And if you strongly oppose this proposal, raise your hand.
Anyway, I think we can come to a decision that it didn't reach consensus. But one thing I mentioned that if you look at the earlier policy discussion and also this one, that there's a feel of that some text we can correct actually, and some are really, some people liked it, some are actually, and this proposal corrected too many things, and maybe some are good, some are bad. But also what After was mentioning, that can we have a review of the document actually, that if there are any textual correction we can make, the Secretary can think about that and make the correction in the PDP, editorial changes in the PDP and the SIG guidelines. We can think about that actually in future.
Sunny from APNIC, we will take a look at it. And if there's any changes to be made, we will put it as editorial comment to the community. Because the community has to...
As a whole, a complete look to the policy, because otherwise it's getting difficult to...
I'll wait for Gaurav's comment.
I support the idea from the SIG chair that I think it is time that we do a overall review of our documents, because I think we haven't done it the last 5 years plus, and do it in a way that is more editorial clarifications in a wholesale package rather than try to do it one at a time. So I fully agree with that. I think as wearing my EC hat, I think we take this as an input. The 6 chairs can give us feedback, and maybe we can work something out.
Thank you, Gaurav. And probably that may resolve some of the Jyoti's concern as well, actually, as a whole. We can do like that. Thank you very much for your suggestion, Gaurav. So can we move to the next proposal? And it's again Jyoti, so...
Yep.
Jingheng, can you...
Okay. Let's go to proposal 130. Jyoti, please make a presentation.
Okay. I am missing the slides in my screen. A little bit. Okay, I keep going at the moment. I presented informally this policy proposal in the previous meeting because I believe the reason was there was not sufficient time in the SIG time. And I think I got only one comment from Craig, if I recall correctly. So I updated that comment in the slides. And basically, the point here is that existing transfer policies for IPv4, IPv6, and ASN, which are different among different regions, sometimes they are not clear about if it means a complete transfer or only a subset of the company or things like that. And sometimes it may happen. There is a recent business case, a big one in the world, which is a company having transit, ISPs, and data centers, and they sold only the data centers division. So that happens. That happens that there are sometimes partial transfers, and they are needed. Okay, so the intent of the policy proposal is to resolve that. Let me. We know that sometimes today is easy for companies, depending on economical situations or where they are their customers or things like that, they move from one region to another. So maybe a company is established today in Madrid, and tomorrow they decide they have more customers or more financial or tax advantages in Japan, and they can move to Japan. Okay, so they may want to transfer those resources. What happens today is that they may be able to transfer only IPv4 because the policy only allows that. But what that means, they transfer everything and they renumber IPv6. That's strange. It seems like they are making partial solution of we are making a partial solution for the problem. So what I am suggesting is, let's allow this kind of merger and acquisitions and relocations and whatever is the name of the situation or reorganization of a company, and then let's allow them to transfer not just IPv4 but all the resources. I think this is a logic thing. We have that in RIPE, for example. I think there is in other regions support for ASN but not for IPv6. So in every region is a little bit different. In RIPE we allow all the cases. So I think that's the most open policy right now. So it's just 3 slides because in the policy manual of APNIC we have one section for IPv4, one section for IPv6, and one section for ASN. So the text is basically the same. What I am changing is allowing, I changed the title to make sure that it's more comprehensive, and what I am doing is a rewarding to make sure that never mind is a partial or a complete case for a merger and acquisition or a reorganization or a relocation. Both cases, inter and intra-RIR, are supported. And I believe this is the sentence that somehow was suggested by the input in the last meeting from Craig. In the case of inter-RIR, the counterpart RIR need to have a policy that allows it. So we have a reciprocal policy for that. So this is for, if I recall correctly, this is for IPv4, exactly the same for IPv6, and exactly the same for ASNs. There is no difference, but in the policy manual we have 3 times the same text for each type of resource. And that's it. I think that resolves the problem. It's a real problem. There are many business situations where you will be forcing the company to keep using, because they can transfer IPv4, but you don't allow them to keep using the same IPv6. So it's ridiculous to me that they can keep using IPv4 and they need to renumber IPv6. Come on. I will agree on the other way around. We need to be proactive with IPv6, not with IPv4 anymore. Okay? But definitively, it's no sense that they need to renumber IPv6. It's not easy. People believe renumbering IPv6 is easy. It's not that way. While today you can have a full data center with virtual machines, and you can just synchronize the data center from Madrid to Tokyo, and when the synchronization is finished, switch off Madrid, switch on Tokyo, and it works without renumbering. It don't make sense that you really need to renumber IPv6 and not IPv4. Please, if we want to do that, let's renumber IPv4, not IPv6. Let's make difficult to use IPv4. I think that's it. Thank you. I am going to keep one of the slides. More or less all of them are the same. That's it. Thank you. Questions?
So any comments on the floor? So, thanks.
Yes, hello, Marco Schmidt, Policy Officer from the RIPE NCC, and I just want to give some clarification because the RIPE policies were mentioned as an example. In the RIPE NCC region, mergers and acquisitions are not defined or restricted by RIPE policies, because it is seen if there's a change of a business structure, then why policies shouldn't interfere with that. So as soon we receive sufficient documentation from a national authority that a change in business structure took place, may it be a partial or complete acquisition, we update the resources in our database and in our internal records. So why policies only refer about pure transfers of internet number resources without any network attached to it. So that might be not completely clear here, because here we talk about merchant acquisition, why policies, merchant acquisition in our region are not impacted by why policies.
Okay.
Marcos, thanks for clarifying that. I missed that part, but anyway, the final point is it's allowed if it happens. That's the thing.
Yes, if we receive sufficient documentation, we allow merchants acquisition at any time. For some resources, for policy transfer, there is a holding period. But this is, yeah.
So this gives me actually one more point to support this policy, because it's a business thing. It's not really a policy. Today we have it as a policy, so we need to resolve as a policy. But probably it will be easy to remove this from the policy and allow it from the administrative side of APNIC secretariat, right? That could be a possibility. But right now, because we have it as a policy already, I think we need to resolve as a policy. I think we need to understand something which is far beyond policies and even bylaws of APNIC. When a company is part of a membership organization, if that company is sold to another company, they have the legal right, at least in Europe, I don't know if in Australia it's the same, but I guess so, they have the real legal right to get the same rights on the membership organizations that they belong to. I guess it's the same here, so it will be weird that we allow partially to have the rights on IPv4 and not in ASNs or IPv6. I guess Craig can clarify if this is part of the same legal system in Australia, I guess, but I think it's normal. When you acquire a company, you acquire the legal rights for the membership organizations that it belongs to.
Jody, let's hear from the floor. Marge.
Yeah, Yoshinobu Matsaki from IIJ. I'm a bit worried about fragmentation of IPv6 allocation by the transfer, because nowadays APNIC is doing the sparse allocation so that the member can expand its IPv6 space without changing or without getting another allocation, right? But once it's transferred to expand their space, they need to get another allocation from that RIR. So still, I'm a bit worried about such a fragmentation by this policy.
I explained this in the mailing list. I don't think this is affecting that. I see the possible case that it may happen that, for example, a company get an allocation from RIPE, and then they move to APNIC, and after a few years, they need another allocation. The new allocation will be from APNIC. So that means that they will not be extending the reservation on their sparse allocation from RIPE, but RIPE can use that allocation for other members, right? So that's not really a problem. The problem is that they will announce two prefixes, one that was originally coming from RIPE, and one that, if they extended the needs that they have for IPv6 space, now is from APNIC. But that's not really changing that much, because these cases will not be hundreds of cases every week or every month. So I don't really think that's a big problem. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Perhaps.
Everyone, please be brief, because I'm afraid that we can complain on the policies today.
The first part where it says the result of a partial or complete merger is right, because companies are merging wholly, or in portions of companies are merging. So this, I think, clarifies it. Why I'm saying it is good is because the current definition of APNIC, which is a 2.5 line definition, it does leave a lot to interpretation by the concerned staff, right? So if we are clarifying it, it does make sense. to the first part, which says partial or complete merger, and reorganization or relocation activity in both cases, intra and inter-RIR. But where it concerns that it should be a policy with other RIRs, I think that needs a little more discussion.
That was, I did that sentence or that paragraph, if I recall correctly, from the inputs from Craig in the previous meeting.
Okay.
Originally, I didn't have that.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi, George Adagi from APNIC, work in services and policy. During the impact assessment, we wanted to ask for clarification about the receiving RIR. So I'm assuming that the receiving RIR would be responsible for evaluating the request, right? So in cases of like ARN, where they have out-of-region policies, what would happen when, say, resources are being transferred from APNIC to ARN and IPv4, they would have IPv4 out-of-region policies. How would that work? Because, for example, they've got requirements saying they have to use at least a /22 in the ARN region. So if they're transferring a 22 from APNIC to ARN, would that mean that it's not compatible, or?
I am not entering in the details of that. I think if it's reciprocal in the sense that it's allowed, it should be allowed. Right. But not, I don't really think it's a problem looking into if it's a /22 the minimum or a /24 or whatever. I don't think that will be a hurdle, but that's something that may need some assessment which aiding, I don't know, in this specific example.
Yeah, it would also be good to hear from RIPE NCC if they have out-of-region policies, if Marco would like to clarify it, because I do believe that might cause some issues as well.
Okay, the last one.
Sorry, Jody. Craig Ng, APNIC. Just a very quick answer to your question. Just because there is a merger or acquisition activity doesn't automatically entitle you to a registration of the transfer, because it depends on the policy. So as an example, if you buy a restaurant, the business that runs a restaurant, and you have a lease over the property, just because you buy the restaurant business doesn't mean you are entitled to the assignment of the lease. You still need a permission of the landlord to get that. So it's similar concept.
Okay.
Marco Schmidt again, RIPE NCC. Just want to confirm what George just said. There wouldn't be any issue.
Just a bit louder.
Sorry, I'm too tall or this is too low. Yeah, I just want to confirm there wouldn't be any problem. Our policy is quite open and relaxed on these points.
Okay, I will now make the consensus call right now.
Before going to that, I'd like to read out a few comments from the mailing list. From Japan Open Policy Forum, they said many participants expressed neutral for the proposal with reasons that they don't imagine the reason why we need to change the policy. And from JPNIC, Hiroki Kawabata commented, we have to make effort to aggregate IPv6 routes to maintain separate allocation mechanisms, since each registry has enough IPv6 prefixes. It's better to receive a new prefix from the registry, partially in merger and acquisition cases. About inter-IR, there are not consensus about merger and acquisition and market transfer IPv6 addresses between RIRs. First of all, we think we need to discuss about it. So no conclusive remark from that. Thank you.
I think my previous answers already respond to both of them.
So the conference is ready? The camera? No. Okay. Okay. So please check to the conference.
Yeah, can you go to the conference page?
Okay. Okay. So let's make wait.
Reset now. Yeah, go on.
Okay. Okay. So if you strongly support this proposal 130, please put your hands up. Strongly support. Okay, thanks.
Aftab Siddiqui, just to clarify, are we asking for the whole proposal or because there are multiple parts of this proposal?
No, we are going for the whole proposal as a whole, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just an FYI, maybe Jody, you would like to address if, just show of hand with the approval of chair, that if community agrees on some part of their proposal, because I would like to support some part of it.
So we do the whole proposal, yeah? Oh, so we, firstly, we make consensus call for the whole proposal. If you support the proposal, please put your hands up. Okay, thanks. And if you are neutral about the proposal, please put your hands up. Neutral. No. Okay, thanks. Yeah. And if you oppose to the proposal, please put your hands up. Oppose. Oh. Okay, thanks. Yeah. And if you strongly oppose to the proposal, please put your hands up. Strongly oppose. Okay, thanks. So. Not consensus. Oh. So make the result. I think we chairs in it has not reached the consensus on this proposal, and so maybe this proposal will have to feedback to the mailing list for more discussion next. And let's go to the next proposal 131, and the additional change in IPv6 policy. So, Jody, please make the presentation.
I don't have the slides here, but...
Jody, just before you start, I just want to mention that we have two policies to discuss still. We have officially only 16-minute time we left. So I'll request we'll extend the session a bit because the other proposals are also very interesting and a lot of discussed in the mailing list, so we want to bring it forward. So, Jody, this proposal also we try to be concise so that we can discuss the other proposal as well today. Thank you.
So, very quickly, this is about some editorial changes. There are small bits in the actual text of the IPv6 policy that are not anymore coherent. For example, one of the parts of the text is saying that because we don't have experience, we cannot do that, which I think today is where saying that we don't have any more experience in IPv6, we can continue doing that. So let me go straight. One comment that I got in the mailing list, and that's the reason we have a version 2 in the last couple of days, was that I put a reference to a document which is a community document. It's not the right policy, so that confused the people, I guess. It's a community best current operational practices. That document was developed in the scope of RIPE, but with contributions from people from all the regions, okay? There was no contributor from here. We make a wide call for people to contribute. We got people from Africa, from LACNIC, from North America, and of course from Europe, but nobody from APNIC step in to contribute. So it's not the right policy, but anyway, what I have done is a small editorial change. I removed that reference from the policy text, so it's not anymore a barrier. So now this document is not mentioned in the policy text, okay? It's just mentioned in the summary of the policy proposal or something like that, but not as part of the policy text. Should not be a barrier for anyone to go for it. So what are the changes? By the way, similar changes have been done already in other regions. So what are the changes? In the first section, which is assignment address usage space, what I am changing only is to say that the actual text talk about something between /64 and /48. I am saying n times /64, whatever you want, okay? So it's more clear, and if instead of /48 you need to assign a customer because it's justified as /44, you can do that. Otherwise, previously, you need to go to the APNIC staff and tell them, hey, I need to do something bigger than /48. not more need for that. The second change is actually related to this. The idea is that previously, if you have to assign multiple /48s or something bigger than /48, so a shorter prefix to a single end site, you need to go to APNIC because, as the policy says, there is no experience on that. That's ridiculous today. Okay? We have experience, and I don't think this needs to be justified to the Secretariat. However, I keep a text, which is the second paragraph, that says that if there is an audit, you will need to justify, but only if there is an audit. Why that? Because this prevents people abusing from the policy. Okay? That's the reason for that. So I think we must trust the people is assigning the right space to end sites, but if somebody abuses and there is a review of his numbering resources, that will need to be justified. Then there is a text that mentioned that an operator can assign something to his own infrastructure. Come on, that's common sense. We don't need that anymore, so I am removing that sentence, that paragraph. If an ISP needs to assign something to a POP, of course he can do it. We don't need text to tell the operators how to do the things, right? And then in the assignments, because we changed the text relevant to the /48s in the other section, I am just referring to that section. So again, we simplify the thing, because in the actual text, you need to go and read the full APNIC guidelines for IPv6 allocation and assignment, while we have now resolved it with a small sentence change, which was this one. Let me go back. This one. We are resolving a full guidelines with this thing. Okay, 4 assignments. So that's it. I think it's a lot of simplification, a lot of extra clarity, and I cannot add anything else. There are similar policies I already mentioned in other regions. I can stay in the first slide just in case there are any questions, but I really, really think that this is quite straightforward and simple. Thank you.
Any comments? Because we have 4 parts additional modification, so it's a lot of the document working.
Can I speak?
Andy, go.
Here is a proposal I can support. This does clarify, makes it a bit easier.
I don't hear you. From here it's very difficult to hear.
I just told you that this is a proposal I can actually support.
Oh, so you support it? I cannot believe that.
It clarifies. As I said, I'm
Thank you very much. Thank you very
always
much.
in favor when you reduce the amount of word in a policy and make it simpler.
This is always my goal. Sometimes it's not easy, but believe me, I am not writing policies because I want to write policies.
Yeah, the other 2 proposals added words. This one removes words.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Aftab Siddiqui. It's strange, but yeah, I do support this one.
Thank you very much.
Okay, but I want to clarify one thing. Right? Let's not look at this text in isolation. As we have discussed it probably 3-4 times today, let's review the whole policy document and try to, because you know, the moment you do something here, it's going to impact on the V4 side as well and the ASN as well, or may not. So what we are trying to do is just fixing few points here and there, whatever we see today, and overlook something else. So but moving forward, I support this one.
Let me clarify that. When I modify text for a policy proposal, I always try to look at all the full manual. I may make a mistake, of course. I will suggest, and this is something that we have in the other regions, in order to help with that, it will be nice if we can get, when a proposal is submitted, a staff impact analysis. That will help to that. So AAs can help to take a look into that and avoid these kind of situations. But believe me, I made my best to avoid breaking anything else. Okay? So I believe there is not anything broken by this, but staff analysis will help always. Thank you.
We'll work on it. Keep working on it. May I? Cheers. Sunny from APNIC Secretariat again. So I see that you removed the reference to the RIPE document there, but we still have IPv6 guidelines, which is also a numbered document, APNIC 114. So if you're streamlining the text and everything, do we still keep the document, or what happens to the document?
I am removing the guidelines only in the sections talking about the assignments, not in the rest of the document, so still useful.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So,
Sorry, by the way, that document does belongs to the community. You know, if community wants to review that document,
We may need to
can do
review
that.
it, yeah.
Yes, please. Yeah, thank you.
Volunteers for reviewing?
This is Yoshinobu Matsuzaki from IIJ. I generally support that document, but you need some minor additional error in the text. In the last one, 10.1.4.1, initial assignment, it says the consideration of 5243 assignments shorter than /48 something, but your new text still saying assignment of multiple /48. So you need to
Oh, so there is an editorial change.
Yes.
I guess
That's
that
a minor.
that can be resolved in the editorial phase because it's clearly a mismatch in the title. Yeah. Okay.
Do you prefer?
I think I prefer the one that I had in the first slide. This one.
Okay.
Yeah. You agree? Assignment shorter than a /48. I think that's the best one.
Hello, I am Praneeth from India. I work in the professional community. And well, this might be a little repeated, but since it's my first policy SIG, I just want to make a few points here. First one, it's really useful to make the terminology a lot simpler, which you are doing in this proposal, because as end customers who actually refer to these policies, it's very helpful when you have, for instance, n times /64 instead of a /48. It makes it very easy for us to understand it instead of referring to several subtexts later rather than just a single one explaining everything. And second point is this really highlights the purpose of revisions in, let's say, RFCs in the IETF. So I really like it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, there are many things, there's some opposition initially, but I think those are addressed, like a RIPE BCOP document reference from the Japan Open Forum community, the object, that is removed. And there's the mailing. Okay, so there is no much feedback from the mailing list. Thank you.
Okay. So maybe we can make the consensus call right now, and we make the confer online.
Now, done.
It's okay? Okay. It's okay. Chill. So let's make the consensus call. If you strongly support this proposal, please put your hands up. Strongly support. Okay, thanks. If you support this proposal, please put your hand up. Okay, thanks. If you are neutral about this proposal, please put your hands up. Okay, thanks. Yeah. And if you oppose to the proposal, please put your hands up. Okay, thanks. And if you strongly oppose to this proposal, please put your hands up. No? Okay, thanks. Jody, thanks. This proposal has made the consensus. Thanks you make this proposal.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So let's move to our last proposal quickly. I will request Dr. Siddiqui to come forward. Prop 132, RPK ROA for full unallocated and unassigned APNIC address space. It was initially posted at AS0 for Bogans.
Hello everyone, Aftab Siddiqui here. Can I have the slides, please? Okay, so as, I can just start by saying something. It's the first iteration of this proposal was, the title was AS0 for Bogans. But of course, as someone raised on the mailing list that it was not very clear, I consulted with the chairs that if there is a policy which restrict me changing the title, and because I couldn't find it in the policy proposal, and they confirmed that there is no restriction, and we can carry on with the changes. So I kept the previous title there as well, but it has been modified slightly to clarify the exact objective in the title as well. Oh, it's coming. Okay, no problem. The name of the file is AS0 ROA. Oh. Sorry.
Doing too many things at a time. So
You have 3 minutes left.
Apologies for that. I think I did it before, under 3 minutes. So AS0 and ASO end up in the same folder. I don't know why. Right, so my countdown has begun. Seriously, you should set up a time countdown. Okay, I did it in 1 minute. Please. So here it is. I still can't see it here. But anyway, so the proposal is the RPKI ROAs for unallocated and unassigned APNIC address space. Previously it was A. So a quick show of hand. How many of you in this audience know what is a bogon? That's a good number. Okay, so I don't have to explain much, but still I will quickly. So a bogon is a packet with an IP source address in an address block not yet allocated by IANA, or the regional internet registries, which are, of course, one of them is APNIC, as well as the addresses reserved for private or special use by the RFC. And that was the problem that I had to change the title of this proposal, because it also talks about the reserved for private or special use cases, which this policy doesn't address. So that's why we had to change it. All right, something wrong with this screen. I can't read it, it's blur. Oh, I can read from here. All right, so what I'm trying to do is, what I'm proposing is, we all know about RPKI. We all know what is a ROA. We spent almost half day yesterday discussing the benefits, the problems, and what we have to do and how to address it. APNIC also conducted a RPKI deployathon so that people understand how you do it. So when you create a ROA, it is a positive attestation saying, this is my AS, this is my prefix. If you see this in the routing table, believe it that it's coming from me. This is a ROA. But you can also create a ROA with AS0 in it, right? When you create a ROA with AS0 in it, it is a negative attestation saying, whenever you see this prefix, never accept it, because it will give you an invalid outcome through RPKI validation, because it doesn't match with 0, and you cannot announce any prefix using AS0. So that's the whole objective. Okay, I'll quickly go to the, okay. So, but why I'm trying to do that, right? So I checked it this morning. There are around 82 IPv4 address blocks and around 25 IPv6 unallocated, unassigned address block in the routing table today. People are using address spaces around, let's say, around about 100 address blocks from APNIC unassigned, unallocated address space freely without any consequences. And I mean, I'm not going into the detail that why they're using it. They're using it because they can. So it is, for me, it's a theft. They shouldn't be doing it. But how we can stop it? Well, there are certain things. What we have discussed, RIRs are not a police. So they cannot go after them saying, you will be under arrest or something like that. So that's not the remit of an RIR. But what they can do is, they can issue AS0 ROA for all these address blocks. And the moment they do that, just remember, if I am doing route origin validation, I will never accept these prefixes on the routing table. Only if I am doing route origin validation. If I'm not doing any validation, they will still be accepted. There are other mechanisms you can stop it through. You can put filters in, and there's a complete list of things as per the RFC 7454, which suggests you should do it. But again, that's a very somewhat manual process. People, that's why, avoid it. This one, if this approves, this will eliminate this manual process, and it will become an automated process. APNIC can generate ROAs for unallocated, unassigned address space, and it will not be accepted by those who are doing route origin validation. We saw yesterday around 600 networks are already doing route origin validation. Means if APNIC creates AS0 ROA tomorrow, at least 600 networks will not accept these stolen v4, v6 address space. Some address blocks are in the global routing table for almost an year, or maybe more than that. I am a member. I pay yearly fee to APNIC to get resources from them. These networks are not paying anything. So why should I pay? So that's the question I need to ask APNIC moving forward. So, but why APNIC should do that? Well, let's read on the NRO website why they should do that. It's in the FAQs, which says, what are the main goals of NRO? The main goals of the NRO are to protect the unallocated internet number resource pool. It is an obligation. They have to do it. Of course they are doing something. They have some measures in place, but all those measures are not working. That's why you have that many address block. And the 100 number of, the block I said, there are around 100 prefixes. That is only from the APNIC region. I'm not talking about anyone outside the address, outside our region. So there is a problem which should be addressed. And the easiest way to address it is just generate AS0 ROAs for unallocated, unassigned address block within APNIC administration. But during the discussion, some concerns were shared by the community members. Some very strong concern came out from Job. I think he's not here in the audience, but I kept it here just to address them so that the community get the clear answer as well. Number one is how much trouble are those 100 prefixes are actually causing the community? So my question to the community is, are you okay with the people stealing those address block and you are paying for it? Are you okay with that? At least I'm not. Maybe I just want to use my V4 and V6 address block without paying anything, if APNIC allows me to do that, because they are allowing them to do that. What does APNIC currently do to reclaim or clean up the space currently? What is the current practice? I mean, for me, there must be some practice. I am not aware of that. If it is, it's not working. More concern, why should it be APNIC itself that makes the ROA for unassigned space? I mean, good question. APNIC, please answer. It's part of the RFC. Why can't you create it yourself, and why we or I have to come up with a policy proposal to do it? Is it part of the policy? I don't know. Community will decide. But APNIC can do it themselves. Has the community considered? Now this one is very technical. So what Job is suggesting is, if you are familiar with how RPKI works, currently APNIC creates a TEL. TEL is Trust Anchor Locator. It's just one TEL. What he is proposing that create two TELs, two Trust Anchors locators. One is for the normal allocated address space, and another one is for unassigned, unallocated address space. And if I am implementing route origin validation, I can pick and choose whether I want to discard the bogons or not. Then it's up to me, right? But that's an operational issue. I would not consider that as part of the policy discussion. It is up to the APNIC how they implement it, right? And then they can go back to the community and say, we think this is the best way to do it, and this will not cause any problem moving forward. But I would like to keep this discussion away from the policy proposal. Right, so the four questions, the concern raised by Job, I just addressed it here. But if you have any other question and concern, I would like to address them as well.
Brajesh Jain here. I am under the constraint of agreeing with the ISOAC chair, so that is one part. So with the mindset of supporting this, I am going ahead. I would just like to sort of little bit on unallocated and unassigned, the difference between the two, while many of us understand, but many of us do not clearly understand the same. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's same thing, but it's different for other region. But we call it allocations only, or the delegation size. So you can say it's not been delegated. So in APNIC region, it's not been delegated to anyone yet.
So in the context of APNIC, then can we say only use the word unallocated? Or
it's just for understanding. It's unallocated and unassigned. It's same. Yes,
okay.
It's unallocated. It's already there. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, this is Praneeth from India. And I have a few clarifications here. First of all, that's a very great problem area you have identified, so appreciate that. And you mentioned that the community pays for this address space, which just anybody can use. So Can you clarify what is the intent of usage? Is it educational and research purposes or just anything? So as a person who might be paying for it, I don't really mind if it's being used for research, but I do if somebody does some harmful activities with it. And following on that, my suggestion would be we can have a certain criteria for the usage instead of questioning the whole thing in itself, that maybe you can use it for research but not for businesses.
Yeah, so for a specific research purpose, you can actually reach out to APNIC and they will give you the address space. Okay. So yeah, and certainly this is not for research. I can guarantee you that. So I looked up a few blogs which you shared on the mailing list. You may end up seeing some spamming coming out of those. Mm-hmm. Not a lot. I didn't check a lot because there are like 100 prefixes. I didn't check all of them, but I checked at least enough to say, well, definitely they are not being used for research purposes.
Well, in that case, I strongly support your proposal. Thank you.
Hi, this is Oscar Robles from LACNIC. Just curious, from the original title of the policy and the arguments that you presented, it looked like it is needed in other regions to have a policy like this in order to have it complete.
I think Jody was right. It's really difficult to hear from, so you have to probably speak up. It's echoing a lot. Yeah.
Sorry. Again, from the original title of the policy and the arguments that you use, it appears to me that it has to be presented in other regions, but I don't see it as a global policy, but only as an APNIC proposal. Is there any plans to present it as a global policy?
Short answer, yes. But to clarify, I wanted to see what is the reaction of the community first before I go ahead and propose as a global policy. I would still consider as individual policy as RIR rather than going into the global policy. Why? I see that as a conflict of interest as myself being the ASO chair. I stayed away from that process, and I thought let's propose it in the APNIC community and see what is their reaction and what the outcome, and then discuss it with other friends from the other regions to figure it out if that makes sense to them as well.
Hi, I'm David Huberman from ICANN. So one of the difficulties in running an RIR is dealing with accounts that go out of payment, they stop paying, the company goes out of business, and you have this address space. And so eventually, per your policies and your procedures, you reclaim the address space, and you have it sit and you hold it for a little while, hoping that it clears out of BGP, hoping it might clear out of any filters or what have you. And then your goal as an RIR is to give the space back out, because especially with the IPv4 addresses, somebody needs that to operate their network. But you don't want to give it out, or you may make the choice not to give it out when it's still being announced, because that's not necessarily fair to the next registrant. If this community moves forward with this proposal, I would hope that the APNIC staff would make even more of an effort than they already do to try and analyze the space that would be covered by AS0 that is announced, to analyze whether or not this is space that was previously registered and might be being used by downstream customers of the former LIR who don't necessarily know about APNIC, who don't necessarily know that the upstream LIR is defunct in APNIC, and are simply using it and paying transit to people and don't understand that there's an issue. And if we can make an effort, even more of an effort, which we already do make, but if we can analyze these specifically before we shut them out of routing, I think that would be beneficial to many end users on the internet using this space unwittingly.
I absolutely agree with your point of view. And before even proposing this text, I reached out to Secretariat first, asking them what is the timelines for them to mark it as available. The timeline, what I got is, which suggests is it goes up to 90 days after multiple reminders and multiple ways to contact them. And for me, 90 days is enough. But if Secretariat decide, well, this can cause problem, as you mentioned, I mean, they don't know that happened. Even in my previous role, we were not getting the invoices for a few months, and we end up getting a call from the APNIC saying, well, pay right now. So because it was almost 2 months past. So yeah, that's such a, if APNIC Secretariat thinks that it's important to increase that 90 days to 120 days, then I have no problem with that. But it should be clearly defined. And when members sign up, they should be aware of that, if they have to be very careful. If they don't pay and they are out of contact for 120 days, that's a lot of time. If that is not enough for the community, make it 180 days. But there should be some finite deadline saying if you are not reachable within that time limit, we will forcefully revoke it. And the forceful revocation is the AS0 ROA. But I agree with your point that this is something which APNIC, and this was raised by a lot of people on the mailing list as well, saying it's going to be complicated for the APNIC Secretariat, how they're going to manage it. But from my point of view, well, that's their problem. So, yes. Mas?
Hi, Yoshinobu Matsuzaki. It's interesting, but my question goes to APNIC. If it's feasible to maintain such a large number of ROA at APNIC, because we now have transfers and assignment, right? So, Sanjay, can you answer the feasibility of the operating the AS0 ROA by APNIC?
Sorry, Sanjay from APNIC. We look at this proposal, and basically technically it's possible in terms of the number, but how we're going to, let's say, do we want an AS0 for each / that we hold, for example, or try to break it, manage it that way, that remains to be decided by our esteemed product manager there, George Michelson. But it's technically possible. May I also respond quickly to David's comment there? You made a good point, especially when it's actually given to another LIR below that doesn't even know that that actually has been revoked by APNIC. We take that as an advice to make sure that that is communicated to them as well. Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you, David, for pointing this out. I know of at least one case in India where it was happening or happened. I do not right now know that, but is this
Come
thing?
close to the mic, please.
Thank you. I know of one case in India where this was happening and downstream were using, I don't know whether without the agreement of the upstream or with the whichever manner. Thank you. Aftab, I wanted to raise another issue of not as part of this policy but as a sub-note. We should extend this activity to the legacy and those unregistered or completely IP addresses of 20% around at some point in time, but not as part of this policy. Thank you.
I would like to limit this proposal for those address block where APNIC has authority. For the legacy blocks, APNIC has no authority. So until APNIC address that, and they should, but for right now the policy proposal is only addressing the address block which is under the APNIC administration. Gaurav?
Gaurav Upadhyaya. I think in principle, I like this policy. But I think there is operational details that needs to be hashed out, because this is kind of departure from the traditional understanding that the RIRs run a registry database, and the state of the internet takes information from that database, but is not really dependent on any state of the database to do things on the internet, right? So that is a kind of a big change, and people may not realize that certainly it is a real tool. I mean, you know, the state of the IRR pretty much tells us that people completely ignore the IRR. And if they do that, right now there are no real consequences. But with origin validation becoming more and more real, it starts becoming a real, you know, consequence of not doing that. So I would probably suggest that we discuss this more, talk to operational experience, and I had the consideration earlier about, okay, in my own head I was saying, okay, if APNIC is doing ROAs AS0, in what chunks, right? People can always use a different length, and certainly it is not covered by ROA. Then what, right? Are we going to issue for every permutation and combination of collection of aggregates, like a /24, 23, 20, 21, all over, and that becomes a, you know, maybe an algorithm can do it, but that becomes an operational burden of how you maintain that, right? That is a tricky question. I don't know if GGM has thought about that. And then also about, you know, when address space transfers and all of that, that is more of a concern. The thing that we were talking about earlier, and as David was referring to, I see that as a completely different issue. Basically, APNIC has procedures on when the address space ends up in that unallocated block. There is a whole cleanup period, and as far as I can tell, nothing ends up in that unallocated block until maybe 6 months after, you know, they stop paying and APNIC has determined that these guys are not reachable. So by the time somebody doesn't pay an invoice to it space, getting or ending up in an allocated block is almost a year, right? So, and there is a set process for that. If we think there is improvements on that, I don't think it should be here. Your definition is pretty clear that it's unallocated space, right? And that, how, you know, if space is in quarantine, that is completely different issue. And APNIC puts space in quarantine when they recover it from memory. So I see that as a different things. If there is improvement needed on the other side, we need to do it there, because not everybody, you know, I don't think we are in a state where origin validation takes care of it, right? Because we are recycling address space, and that is a separate issue. But on the RPKI side, I think Craig can probably advise how to take this forward if there is a mandate for the EC or the secretary to look deeper into it. Yes. But I think we do need to hash this out a little bit more.
Okay, so I can quickly answer the last point is, so if we can move forward with one thing, saying right now the delegation file says two things: reserved. So if it is not delegated, so there are two other options: either it is reserved or available, right? So reserved is something which is, as you said, is in quarantine at the moment. You can say, well, okay, fine, in principle we agree, but we're going to only do that for available right now until we figure out and come up with more proper solution and how you're going to address the reserve. So how APNIC mark their address space unallocated is up to APNIC to decide. I'm only saying which is already highlighted as unallocated should have an AS0 ROA, and if it is, if reserved for APNIC is not an unallocated, they can say, well, sorry, we cannot create that, or it's still in quarantine, and we may end up getting the payment or whatever from the previous owner, and we may end up assigning it. So we're gonna create it for the available only, because it has crossed that limit, and now it is available. So
yeah,
that's why I kept it separate.
It's a separate issue.
I kept it separate. I didn't mention any operational issue, even though people on the list insisting that put that request in the proposal. I said it's an APNIC Secretariat's operational concern, not a policy. I think that one.
Hi, Aftab. This is Pavel from AIT. It is my understanding that when bogon filtering, bogons change regularly, and unallocated space gets allocated eventually, right? So if you could just clarify a little bit more. So APNIC would be the one allocating the AS0 ROAs for these bogons, right? And also coming to maybe a potential disadvantage of filtering bogons in the network, how can we guarantee that we don't filter other packets by accident? If you could just address these concerns.
So the current practices we have to filter bogons can cause this problem, right? Because it's very close to being manual. There are no automated process to get the bogon list and then you filter it. I mean, in my policy proposal, I did mention that there are two organizations which provide you bogon list on day-to-day basis, that is Team Khumri and Qaeda. And if you look at the list, they only give you available. They don't give you reserve. So if you are taking the BGP feed from them, you can automate it. If you are doing something manual, there are more chances today for not accepting a prefix which has been allocated by the RIR rather than using rather than if RIR generate an AS0 ROA. So if there is an AS0 ROA exists today and APNIC wants to allocate it to somebody else, they can simply revoke the certificate and allocate it to somebody else. And the time was shared. The validators sync quite often to get that update from the tail rather than waiting for a couple of days. So that, for me, that's not an issue from operationally. It's a bigger problem today rather than if you accept this proposal and it becomes an AS0 ROA.
Thank you.
Craig?
Craig, just a very brief clarification, which I think you've already clarified, but so you talked about the account closure procedure and timing for non-payment. I think APNIC's credit terms is outside, obviously, of the policy process. The account closing procedure is outside of the closing
As
of
I
the
said,
procedure.
yes.
But how long before it gets on the AS0 is in this room? Just want to clarify that point.
No, sorry, come again. Last
So
statement.
how long after an account is closed before the address goes on to AS0? In my non-technical speak,
So,
is the subject in this room?
No,
right?
no. It is still up to APNIC to decide how long you need to make sure that is absolutely now unallocated.
Okay, and I'm fine with that. I think the point I wanted to make really just relates to the closing process, because that's APNIC's
Whenever
prerogative.
APNIC decide that now this prefix is unallocated, absolutely, whether it's as per the current procedure 90 days, 120 days, 180 days, or 1 year, it should be clearly defined. But that's my point of view. It's not part of the policy. It's my recommendation. It should be clearly defined that whenever APNIC decide that now this is unallocated, they create an A0 ROA.
Accept and agree. So that's a transparency part. Yep.
Yep. That's an operational point which I haven't mentioned in this proposal.
Yep.
Thank you, Craig. I will take two more comments, Mac.
Good afternoon. My name is Karan and I'm from AIT. First question is, as others have already pointed out, it's in the objectives, it's important to differentiate between unallocated and unassigned. Because I feel they have like separate meanings, even if they're allocated, sometimes they may not be like directly, so.
Okay, so these are only, for APNIC community, these are unallocated address space.
Okay, and one more comment I'd like to make is, when we put the AS0 like on these IP addresses, they might break networks that are research based, although you have done your research based saying most of them are serving spam. So I think there needs to be further study on how these IP addresses actually route or how they're being used in detail before you actually put them behind, close them for good.
Okay, so even if we accept this proposal today, you still have 4 weeks to do the research. Go back, do the research, and I would really appreciate, I'm willing to help you out and find out what they are doing with that address space. And within 4 weeks, you can come back, they are doing a really good job, please don't remove them, and we will still consider it. But right now, we have no idea what they are doing with it. And I said, I checked at least enough addresses, well, I won't say 10, and blocks. And all those 10 blocks had spam, DNSBL checkmark on them. So whatever they are doing, I really don't care. They are not paying the fees, and this is the breach of membership agreement. And then why should I pay? So that's my only point. If they have research need, they can come to APNIC and they can ask for the resources.
Thanks, Aftab. I think we understand that. We are running out of time, sorry.
Thank you.
We can further discussion on that. Martin, last quick comments from you.
Yeah, Martin Levy, Cloudflare, quite quickly. Each of the RIRs has set up a TA, the beginning of their RPKI certificate, and each of the RIRs, except for APNIC, has placed in that TA the AS numbers 0 through 4 billion. APNIC explicitly did it right and set the AS number 1 through 4 billion. The 4 billion is 2 to the 32 minus 1. While this AS number doesn't come out of that range, it's unclear you have within the decision within the RPKI group inside APNIC the right to use AS0 because your TA has explicitly started at 1. I point this out as a very pedantic yet technical point of which will then cause George a certain amount of pain. So
no, I saw that when I was reading the CPS, which says that it's starting from 1. And if you read the RIPE and CC one, it says from 0 to all the way to the end.
All the other RIRs stay 0.
But I kept it away from the policy, said, well, it's an operational discussion. APNIC never reached out to the community saying, this is what we are doing. Well, I'm not going to tell you, this is what you should do. So it's an operational discussion they should be having internally and come up with a solution.
Right. From an operational point of view, I wouldn't want to see the TA change just because of this.
I agree.
May I? Please. One response to that. I thought that the creation ROA is actually dependent on the prefix owner, not the AS owner. Yeah. So really, it doesn't matter.
All right. I am, and I have history in this department, making a very pedantic point, but a point none the same.
It has to be made. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aftab, and thank you for those lively discussions. And this policy also in the mailing list for quite some time, and there are a lot of feedbacks we've received from mailing list. If you summarize those, then what we find that a large number of, most of the people who participated are actually supporting proposal, but always raising a concern that if the implementation is erroneous, then there might cause outage for some client, some members. So that was the main concern. And we heard from APNIC that they have no problem in implementing that. So there is not that technical challenge. Sunny wrote a detail about the implementation procedure in the mailing list. Do you want to say it again, actually, just briefly?
Chair,
that how you actually...
if I may, so on, thanks for the Secretary providing a detailed response, but that in my response, I said, these points are operational discussion, which is not part of the policy discussion, so it shouldn't be discussed on the policy.
I agree. Right? I agree with that. But again, there's some concern mostly on that part, not on the policy principle part. Everybody agreed actually, but the concern was in the mailing list.
Yep. And that's why we have. Yeah.
And we are also running out of time. In fact, we have already taken 30 minutes of lunch time and also moving to the next meeting. But I need to go for the consensus call quickly, and then. But we must think about that. If the policy even passes, how to implement that procedure, you know, think. And we already have actually 4 to 8 weeks time to comment on that, standard 4 weeks, but we can extend it to another 4 weeks for discussion. So we have options to discuss any further if we need.
If required, right?
If required, of course. So I now like to jump to the consensus. Remote participant, please join through the confer. And in the room, if you strongly support this proposal, please put your hands up. Thank you. Those who are supporting this proposal, please put your hands up. Thank you. If you oppose to the proposal, please put your hand up. Anyway, non-opposing. Sorry, I missed one thing. If you are neutral about this proposal, you can raise your hand too. Nobody is neutral, okay? If you strongly oppose to the proposal, please put your hand up. Thank you very much. And I think the proposal reached consensus. And thanks for your time.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the
And
support.
please rush for your dinner because the AMM will start at 2. Thank you very much.